Hi there, welcome to the video. Welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case and coverage. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere. The whole point of this video, two parts to it. One, to teach you how to go about a case such as Dylan Rounds and how I did it from my experience. It may help you when researching this case or maybe another one in the future, as well as my reactions and responses to dealing with different characters in the case, how it all came about and how certain information was distributed and how you'd react to it, you know, to get that balance going and to talk about balance in general. So part of this video may help you understand. It might help those people that have got to the point where they're almost a lost cause. Not literally a lost cause like some, but on the verge or heading towards that direction. Maybe this video can guide you in some way or another, whether it be this case or another one out there. Take in mind, I do have a fair bit of extensive experience when it comes to covering more than one case. I mean, realistically speaking, I've covered 2 cases in 3 years. So yeah, other people may have covered significantly more, but for me to cover 2 for that long, right, to be constantly producing new perspectives and theories and ideas, there's more depth and experience behind it. So there's a bit more stability and enough experience and variety to be able to put this video into format right now and present it to you, okay? The second part of this video can be looking at comments from the last Dylan Rounds video I did, answering any questions, adding on from there. I was partially debating whether to do a bit of map analysis as well regarding the last piece of evidence supposedly found, but maybe that can be a separate video, right? I don't want to clog this one up too much. I'm aware maybe really not many people will see this immediately, unfortunate, but I'm still going to make the video regardless. I'm still making Kenny Veach videos, in case you're wondering. Just got busy today, things going on in the background. So when I want full-on focus and a need to be able to reach out and get this material and get that all in one, right now is not the appropriate time, but tomorrow or the day after, likely possible, right? This video is a bit more relaxed, if you want to call it that, but still, I'm focused because I know what I'm doing. Sounds a bit silly, that, doesn't it? But, you know, for those that are present in the live chat, feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, and reactions, whether you agree or disagree. You know, whilst going throughout this video, you can also share your experiences if you want. If you feel worried of possible drama or conflict, F it. Doesn't matter, right? Because we've seen the life cycle. It comes and goes. It is what it is. Once you get the idea of the patterns and the waves, you know, in some people's mindsets, you don't have to fear it. You don't have to worry that much. You know, sometimes, yes, you can bring it upon yourself and that's your fault, but if you still have it under control, it's not the end of the world, right? So if any of you watching right now and those in the background want to share your experiences with the Dylan Rounds case, how you went about researching it, what you heard, how were you treated elsewhere, how did people react and respond to you when you were thinking maybe outside of the box or you didn't agree with somebody else who was supposedly stating it as a fact, how did people respond to it? I want to know your experiences in the chat or in the comment section down below. If you'd like to, you know, view some additional links, whether it be support the channel or whatever, there's some links down below in the pinned comment section. If you do want to catch my previous videos, feel free to do so. There'll be an I symbol top right corner of the screen with a link to the Dylan Rounds playlist and the last video I did, which was Kenny Veach. Now, I guess there's no harm in mentioning that as well, because I saw a few, I guess, familiar faces, if who they are really them, right? Because you never know. I was covering the Kenny Veach case yesterday, right? Completely different case, and for the most part of it, a different audience, right? maybe more so people that watch in the background and don't comment in the live chat, different type of audience people. But I saw a Salty Pancakes channel make an appearance last night, whether it really is Salty Pancakes or somebody else. And I think the Brody or the Jody, whichever username they go by now, also showed up as well, obsessing about the wig. So what that goes to show is a bit of cross-contamination of possible, potential, not literal, cancer, right? Where you might get unsavory people that then interfere with another case. And I don't know if it's just my mindset. If people want to do a poll here or a poll on my channel, we can do so. But in my mindset, I feel that if there's going to be drama, if there's going to be conflict in a true crime community or a mystery community, it's best remaining where it's at. And although it's still not a good thing because it can harm, it can make a mockery of a specific case like Dylan Rounds, I think if it's going to happen, it should stay where it started. If it starts branching out onto other cases, then we have a serious problem and it's very unnecessary, right? You can still whinge, they can still whine within an appropriate area and environment, right? Because all it does, if people then drag it over to completely different cases and they come on in chat or comments afterwards, and they originate from the Dylan Rounds drama, and yet they're still bringing it up on completely irrelevant videos, it clearly shows that they truly don't care about missing people. Even if some of them claim that they do care, well, they don't, because you should have a form of respect and certain standards where it should be talked about and where it shouldn't be. If we're covering a completely different case and it's got absolutely nothing to do with Dylan Rounds, the Dylan Rounds drama and conflict should not cross over, right? Unless somehow there is exceptions where there are links to be made, right? Comparisons, a crossover. But if you're doing a standalone focused video or series on a case, it's completely different to another case where all the drama's at, and it should remain over there. That's my mindset. That's where it's always been. I've always had it drilled in my mind that if any point, and more so in the past, right, when heat level was up here, I always had it in my mind that, God, just imagine if I went onto a previous case and then it just brought in a wave of darkness and it effed up everything. That's what I kept thinking would happen. So maybe subconsciously me delaying the Kenny Veach case was because of that, subconsciously, not primarily, but like a secondary thought. And in all fairness, it was probably for the best as well, right? Of course, breaking news coverage always came first, and when it could be delivered, I'd do it regardless. But as for all the other coverage, like what you've seen recently, right, besides the satellite footage of a body supposedly being caught on camera, that's a bit more breaking news. But some of the other stuff, the little analysis, the little reflective type videos looking back retrospectively, if that was done in a series back then, earlier on, when there was a higher heat level around the channel and elsewhere, it could have completely corrupted it all, right? So maybe that's one of the first steps, or one of the steps within when a person covers a case, right? And we can get more into it later if you want. What I'd say to you, if you're going to cover a case, maybe try and stick with it, right, somewhat consistently. And if there's times of drama or conflict, try your best to stick around. Treat it as a stamina war, and then it can wear out, right? And then if you got to that point where you really have had enough of a case, or the tension and the drama within, try and see it out, or see it out to a checkpoint. Use it as a checkpoint system. Once you get to a point in a case or a community where it's kind of died off, the tension and conflict for now, then maybe that's the time to exit through the back door, right? And you can always return back to that case at a later point once you're more refreshed. But if you're going to back out of a case and you're thinking of moving on to a different case and community, it's probably best to let the dust settle before you move on. Because if you don't, and you instantly move on to something else, it can be a trigger for all of the cancer, for all of the darkness to then see it as a reaction. That person has left and moved on to another case because they can't cut it anymore. We have won. That'll be going through their mindsets, right? And it's giving them satisfaction. They're enjoying it, and it might even make them push harder like a hunt, cat and mouse. So they then come on over, encroach onto a different case you're covering. That dirty laundry contaminates a different case, which could be more pure and genuine, right? Look at the Christine Passé Parker case. Up to now, at least, no signs of foul play, not really. As for the friends and family members, from the looks of it, innocent, genuine, they want to find her, but they also welcome the general public. As for misinformation, that doesn't seem to be a thing at this moment in time. As for sightings, which didn't really come to much, yes, that's happened, but that wasn't the family or friends' fault. It was general public just reaching out randomly here and there, but nevertheless, it was better than nothing. People trying, right? People trying to report on the case, trying to cover it, and the friends and family appreciated it. Pretty good, right? And as I said, on that occasion, there was a few people from the Dylan Rounds community. Now, I can't remember all the names. Was it Guidance? Was it Leanne? Was it somebody else, Watch Her Crazy? Whatever, who came on over, commenting for a brief period in the chat, and it was relevant to the case. The darkness or the stuff that might be tied to them, they didn't pull on over into a new case at the time, such as on my channel. When I've covered Kenny Veach recently, when Watch Her Crazy has commented, she's not caused any trouble. So that's very good. I appreciate that, right? So a time and place where you can cover something somewhat consistently, a particular case, you might have to be put up, you're backed up against the wall, you're having to deal with a lot of pushy stuff and resistance, and it might be uncomfortable, but it'll only get more uncomfortable if you back down and you move away too quickly onto another case, because it triggers to them as an alert that they have won and they push even more after, and then that leads to them cross-contaminating another case out there, right? So if you want to cover a different case from time to time, try and pick the right place, the right time. When you sense it is, then move forwards, right? That's just one of the methods. It's not the very first method, right? Because then that would be like over and done with, case closed. But it more applies to if you've been doing something for a fair bit of time and then you pick the right place, the right time to then move on and cover something else, the cost of damage limitation. So that's one of the key things, damage limitation. We have seen that drama and conflict between different channels and key characters, whether it be the channel owners or some of the audience members, back and forth. Yes, it originated from the Dylan Rounds case for most part of it. Even people that may not really care about Dylan Rounds nor contribute to the case, but they've stuck around and been dragged in here and there. And ever since, they may have parted ways or gone on to different platforms or gone on to different channels, but that drama has followed in that direction as well. Now, treat it like a tornado. You could, you know, if you're within the vicinity, within the area, you could get sucked into it. It could get a bit dangerous. And you never know, the unpredictability, it could suddenly turn around and come your way all of a sudden, right? Treat it like a tornado. I think most people will be able to relate, since the majority of people that watch these videos are from the US, and obviously the US, certain parts experience tornadoes, hurricanes, etc., storms. So treat the Dylan Rounds case and community as like a storm, right? Comes and goes, focus in certain areas. So whatever's going on right now with all the drama and conflict, wherever, whenever, some of that will come back to the Dylan Rounds community if those type of people just so happen to do a video or a bit of coverage on the case. And then if other people, outsiders or other channels, are covering the case at the time, that can maybe interfere with those people, or those people can interfere with the genuine people. And then that external drama has come back into the Dylan Rounds case, coming and going, right? So it's not just a checking out process in which, when it's appropriate to avoid damage limitation and stuff, reduce it, but it's also when you're covering the actual case itself at the time, just to be alert and aware that unrelated drama and conflict can always come back if it originally started here, which for most part of it, it did, right? So yeah, I know you can say we kind of like jumped in at the deep end here all of a sudden, but this is raw. This is like a raw reaction and a raw explanation for those that are learning about the case or want to learn about it or want to learn about another case out there. You'll always get crossovers and links. Now, maybe you probably come across more links with behavior of people, those that are trying to solve the case, those that are trying to cover the case, those that are trying to wiggle their way in and cause disruption for whatever reason, and those genuine people that just simply that want to watch along or listen on in. You know, who do you look up to? Who do you listen to, etc.? Maybe you'll find more links and correlations, maybe more so negative correlations with cross-party true crime cases, right? I mean, it's a little bit random this, but like when we talk about drama and misunderstandings, but then certain communities having wars with one another, such as the time with Zav Girl and what was it, the Gannon Storch case or something, that the younger individual and the autopsy photos, how it was all controversial there. You had some of the Zav Girl supporters defending her, and then you had the outsiders, maybe the majority, that were, you know, bashing Zav Girl, right? And it was all to do with true crime, maybe a form of evolutionary competitiveness to get a hold of material which no one else has, to then share it with others and be on top. Or if it was just for genuine reasons, somehow misunderstood. Things can happen, right? Shit can go down. So different case, yes, but true crime. Drama came from it, conflict came from it. It was documented by all these big famous YouTubers, Twitch streamers. It was a bandwagon moment. Now, I briefly covered it, but guess what? I didn't just focus on Zav Girl. I was referring to other people out there. I can't remember all the names now, but I was pointing out that yes, everybody can go after Zav Girl, criticize her, but let's take into consideration there are other people out there that may have done the same exact thing, but they're not receiving any, you know, bashing or critiques, are they? Oh, it's because Zav Girl is a bit more of a popular channel. So if someone's more popular or higher up on the hierarchical list, they're supposedly seen as to be taken more into accountability for their actions, and that when they do something bad, they need to be severely punished. But then if a lower end person did something bad, oh well, never mind, we don't know them, so it doesn't really matter. See, this is the thing, and I was going to try and maybe do it as a singular video. Maybe I can still do it in a singular video, but with the Dylan Rounds case, with that Gannon Storch case, with Idaho 4 case, and many other true crime cases out there, you will get drama in it, right? I think most people are sick and tired of the word drama because they've heard it so much and seen and experienced it so much in these different cases. Quite a lot of it coming from the Dylan Rounds case and then branching out afterwards. But this is the thing, right? I've seen viewers over time mention how drama equals views, views equals success, success can equal more opportunities, whatever. But this is the thing, drama doesn't always equal success. Drama doesn't always equal views. How will I know? Because I've seen it with other channels out there, right? Maybe get a certain type of community, certain type of people. And I don't want to go too specific because I'll probably get called out for that. But you see the views, 200, 300 views, 22 views, 24 views, pretty dead end, right? Maybe the same amount of views as you would normally get on their other random videos, whatever, right? From my experience, you know, if there's been a supposed drama or supposed conflict and I was just simply addressing things and defending myself, statistically speaking, it had no benefit on me, right? Statistically speaking. I've done other videos. I've done some random videos at times where you could look back and think, what the was that all about? And that performed significantly better than a formal, structured, drama-orientated video talking about certain key characters which will pop up in your mindsets, right? Just how it is. So I know people could say, well, If it didn't equal success, if it didn't equal getting lots of views, then what was the point of covering those drama videos then, Raf? Wasn't it a waste of time? The fact that maybe it caused more conflict than it was worth down the line and it brought in bad people, etc., etc. You could treat it like that, but I've got some counterpoints. Natural experiments. The one reason why I'm able to make this video right now and to be able to help you understand how to cover a case and how to deal with things is because I've experienced certain stuff like that type of conflict on the receiving end, right? These little experiments, if you want to call it that, natural, sometimes participant observations and experiments, right? Where it just happens. You know, when people do push it at times where they're like, oh, you know, you're covering this drama, you're mentioning that key name, you're mentioning that private investigator in the title, in the thumbnail, in the tag section, the hashtags, you're doing it because you've got nothing else to create. You're doing it because those names and those keywords will bring in more viewers because you're talking about a popular or successful person. No, because as said, statistically, those videos don't exactly perform. I mean, I can't think of like pure examples straight to the point. Like when I do the Kenny Veach videos, they're just pure interest with people. People watch them. People are locked in on that case. With the Dylan Rounds ones, besides the drop off naturally because people have got bored with the case over time, you can see it statistically speaking across all boards when it comes to online. I know some people out there will say, yeah, but look at these live streams and these live panels by specific channels. They're still getting over 1K views. Yeah, well, in the title, they've mentioned the Dylan Rounds case, but the majority of what they talk about in those live streams have absolutely nothing to do with the Dylan Rounds case. And there's just a lot of umming and ahhing. So really, kind of irrelevant. Yeah, what they do could be considered somewhat successful, but it's not because of the Dylan Rounds case, it's because of the stuff that they talk about and the audience members they have. And we can talk about audience members and statistics in general shortly. But because I have experienced that when talking and covering or being involved in drama, it doesn't equal success or views. But why do I do it then? Simply to defend myself, and other times when related and relevant to the case, to document. Take in mind, I have witnessed key, important, vital information and videos have been erased from history when it comes to the Kenny Veach case, never to be retrieved ever again. Very unfortunate, very disappointing, right? We're taking that into mind from the past of how things can just disappear like that, whether it be a channel, a video on a channel, a comment on a video's channel, right? It can just disappear. Profile pictures can change, usernames can change, small levels of activity ranging all the way up to big obvious changes and things moving about. And when you're covering a mystery or a missing person case, you want to be observant as much as possible and pick up on the small details, right? If you don't, wasted opportunity, things lost. So with the Dylan Rounds case, I've applied it here, being extra cautious, extra observant, right? So even when we see changes in behavior by people, right? Those transitioning from normal to a lost cause, from normal to out of control, foul-mouthed, whingy, whiny, whatever it might be, documenting it all so then new viewers and regulars and returning viewers can look back retrospectively and see that how drastically people have changed, right? Because you got to take this into consideration. A lot of time, we get these live panels call-ins and you get these responses, people calling in or leaving comments in the comment section. They'll be saying, I don't remember saying that. I don't remember doing that. I was never like this. I was never like that. How can it be backed up? The only way people back it up is by saying, well, I was there to see how you were back then. And they could be like, it's just your word, you know? Where's the proof? Where's the actual proof? People don't have it, do they? I do, though. I do have proof. I have documented Salty Pancakes when he was somewhat okay, and then when it went downhill. I do have proof. I do have evidence of how someone like Indiana can go from somewhat okay, fairly normal, to really dark and not at peace with oneself. Also documented many other people as well out there. You know, Mr. X, Jim Terry, how at one point Mr. X was like, you know what, Warlight Ref, you're doing a good job. Don't let the haters put you down. Keep on going and pushing forwards. Now, was that by Jim Terry or Mr. X? Well, it appeared to be on the Mr. X account at the time, right? And I did document that in the past. But then afterwards, it was the complete opposite. It was, oh, Warlight Ref's complete idiot, useless, not even bothering with the case at all, whatever. Before and after. Jim Terry as well, how whingy and whiny, but then suddenly apologising all of a sudden, but then afterwards complaining again, right? See, it's a bit off subject this, but I just want to mention it anyway. But there's times and moments where you may quote somebody or give a reference, and then people instantly think, oh, you're mentioning that name for drama, clicks, views, and success. But as said, we've already discussed, drama does not always equal views. It can be the complete opposite. It can actually put people off from watching. But if you've got a genuine reason to cover it, to defend yourself or to document changes and stuff, so then people can look back as a form of proof and evidence over time, it's worthwhile doing. But aside from that, sometimes you got no choice but to leave quotes, reminders in a title, just in the video itself, right? This, what I'm about to say, is a lose-lose situation. So take that into mind whenever you're thinking of covering a case or getting more hands-on with the Dylan Rounds one. There's times and moments where you might have to quote somebody, and that somebody could be an unsavory character or an unpopular individual within the Dylan Rounds case, for example, right? There's times in the past where I quoted Jim Terry, or I referenced him because that's where some of the information came from, or one of the theories originated, etc., etc. On the odd occasion where it was initially interpreted incorrectly by Jim Terry that I did not credit him. When it came to the Brookie situation, he made it clear he was pissed. He wasn't happy. He wanted to be credited. He wanted his name to be mentioned in my video because what I was talking about and the research covered was first brought up by him, Jim Terry. Now, originally I provided a link, I made a reference in the comments or the description. Jim Terry jumped the gun on that occasion, made a big mistake. He apologised afterwards. It was documented on my channel. In case you're wondering, you can always look back, okay? But then in the future, when I was still doing videos and quoting and referencing people such as Jim Terry, all of a sudden, Jim Terry and some of the supporters were complaining to me saying, why are you mentioning this person's name? Is it because you want views? Is it because you want this or that? Why include us in your titles or hashtags? Don't mention us at all. That's so stupid, right? I get criticized for supposedly not crediting or naming these individuals as the sources from where information research came from. But on the occasion that I did mention the names and quoted and referenced them, gave credit, they don't like that. So what are you supposed to do? You don't credit the people, they get angry. You credit the people, name them, they get angry. That's how pathetic humans are, such as in the Dylan Rounds case. I've not seen it to that extent anywhere else. So really, they can't even make their own mind up. And if they can't make their own mind up, are they in the correct state of mind? Is it more so the lights on but nobody's home? I don't know. More so in a conflict with themselves, tussling back and forth. Yes, I want you to credit my name. I want you to give me, the credit deserved of what I've done, what I've accomplished, what I found. But I don't want you mentioning my name or crediting me as a source for misinformation, which I originally stated. Pick and choose. People only want to be credited and remembered for the right things, for the correct stuff, but the times they effed up, they don't want their name dragged through the mud, even though it's for valid observational reasons. Pick and choose. Hypocritical. Yeah, we get that picture. You see how I picked up on the spot, very raw. It was one of those things. So to maintain balance, you just simply quote and credit people regardless whether they like it or not. Tough shit, right? Yes, it can put you up against the wall, back against the wall, but long term, it's just worthwhile being consistent, because if you ever move on to other cases, move elsewhere, talking about other stuff, a different case, and for some reason you followed that previous mentality of, I won't credit people, I won't mention the names, I won't provide the links to the channels just in case I get called out for it, most definitely you're going to be called out regardless if you don't mention the names, because you probably get done for, copyright or, claiming ownership of something which you didn't find or create. So it's always better and easier just providing links or just reference points in the video with your wording or the comments down below, whatever, for the best, right? Keep at somewhat of a consistent rate with certain aspects and how you go about within cases. You keep it consistent, it makes it more easier to transition from one case to another, right? The consistency and the balance can be tied hand in hand together, right? Consistency in sticking around even when there is tension, waiting it out like a stamina war and then moving on afterwards, damage limitation. Consistency in certain coverage and how you reference people. The consistency in constantly referencing people, giving a provenance, makes it easier to always look back on and know where it came from, and makes it more easier and helpful for the general public to always look back on as to where it came from. And by keeping up with that mentality and method, when you do move on to another case, when there's the right place and the right time, you'll follow on with that and you actually be more appreciated more over there. Like, when it comes to the Kenny Veach case, although that might have been my first case that I did, constantly I did reach out to people. Can I cover this? Can I cover that? Can I use a little bit of this footage? Credit you in the channel description or the comment section. I'll do this, I'll do that. And, people, some were saying, do you know what? You don't even have to credit me at all, but thank you for asking in the first place. You might not always get that positive response, just like with the Dylan Rounds case, but elsewhere, sometimes when you just reach out or ask, people will thank you and, take you as being considerate. And, sometimes you might have more chance of being able to cover something or include material in your video in other situations where you probably wouldn't if you just outright used material without even asking them. So sometimes just asking can be enough for them to think, you know what, it's good of you to reach out. Yeah, you can. And obviously, if you're in a situation where you can get hold of material or some kind of evidence footage to put into your videos to tie in with a theory, to reinforce an idea, then that's what you probably should do, right? I know with the Dylan Rounds case, there's been many times where there's not enough provenance as to where things came from, right? And maybe it's happened more with viewers that reach out to other different channels and listen in. And they may come on back or come elsewhere and say, did you hear about this? This happened, then that happened, then this happened. And then you ask them, right, well, where did it come from? I don't know. Where did it directly come from? I can't really reveal my sources. And it's like, what's the point being here then? What's the point talking about it if you can't reveal much depth behind it? How we're meant to believe it, right? But you're expected to believe it even when there's not enough provenance, when there's not enough credit given as to where it came from in the first place. Simply crediting can also enable people to understand whether they should believe in it or not. The trust factor, one of the key things, right? And I think that's probably the next point, what we move on to when it comes to covering a case like with Dylan Rounds. The trust factor is pretty important, right? In general, when you get involved with a case, missing person one, true crime, whatever, you look at the news reports, you look at the news articles, you follow the official story 9 times out of 10. And maybe at a point in time, you might start thinking outside of the box with your own thoughts and theories. It might even be accelerated or intensified where you're in a situation of a cold case, a dead end, nothing's being done, no one's getting anywhere, or complete silence from the police. So then people just do nothing but guess, theorize, and some go deeper with conspiracies, kind of like Idaho 4. But eventually that was crushed because the police did reach out and gave a bit of an explanation to calm the tension down, right? Dylan Rounds case, kind of like the same thing. Times of silence, People come on in, people try and take over, may not always give the providence or may not always show the hard evidence, but you're kind of forced to agree with it. And if you don't agree, what happens? I guess it depends the situation you're in. If you're an independent person or you got your own channel, you do your own thing and you disagree with it, not as much happens. But if you're a viewer on their channel and you disagree, you might get attacked for it. There's a bit of a hierarchical situation there, a bit of power dynamic change, right? So sometimes you're dealing with a case, you're doing it by yourself, you can still cooperate with people around, you can just listen in and stuff, but there's not as much control over you because you're doing your own thing. If you're in a situation where you're hanging around them or you rely on them, you might be forced or cornered into agreeing, going along with it even when you don't want to. So really, you get involved in cases, immediately you want to be able to stand your own ground and cover your own stuff, so you've always got something to fall back on, right? And also, speaking of falling back on stuff, sticking with the original story isn't always a bad thing, right? And it will tie in with my previous point mentioned before, that when it comes to the trust factor and you get involved with a case, you always look at the official stuff to begin with and the official people within, such as the police, the LE, if the FBI is involved or not, and also the family. These are key people who are physically in touch and involved in the case directly and also mentally. And when it comes to the information being passed around, yes, the police and the higher authorities will always gather it first and may not always release it to the general public immediately, maybe dragged out over time, maybe breadcrumbs along the way. Sometimes the family don't even get told either. But once you've established some kind of hierarchical list, then you know who to look up to first when it comes to following a story and case, right? Typically the police authorities, followed by the family members, and then maybe some news articles as well, because sometimes the news articles come underneath the family because the family may reach out to the news outlet media and then do an interview or some kind of like press conference, whatever, right? Now, with each case can be different, and maybe the Dylan Rounds one is the most obscure because whilst you may want to establish the trust factor of having some form of stability in the case, where to get the information from, who to look up to, who to trust, the Dylan Rounds one is slightly distorted and tainted by the fact that the LE have messed up at times and have been seen questionable, bit dodgy behaviour as well. The family as well, to an extent, there's been a few dodginess going on there, where it be people pushing certain theories, conspiracies, agendas, witch hunts, or just the natural occurrence of them, maybe more so Candice Cooley, but maybe Justin Rounds has contributed in a way by not clearing things up publicly when there's been mistakes made, a bit of misinformation, a slight error when wording something, right? Bit problematic, right? And it's probably been more intensified in this case alone. With the Kenny Veach case, a range of people there that very intensely believe that Susan Veach isn't exactly genuine and that it could be somebody else, or they're not helping, but really they're just reaching out, showing what they know and what they've experienced, right? So by pushing them away, what good does that do? Surely you want key people involved cooperating with one another so then you can learn more and make more progress. But, you know, when people are a little bit too skeptical or cautious, it can deny those opportunities. So the lack of trust is there, and that can be damaging towards a case, right? You know, there is a way to counter that for the skeptical people, the people that don't believe it, or the ones that might be cautious coming into a case for a first time or moving on to a different one, or actively in the Dylan Rounds case, that you might not believe in the people, you might not trust them exactly, but you can still listen. If you completely shut out and you use selective hearing, then it's game over from there and you're on the way to becoming a lost cause, right? Not everyone can express pure perfection and balance. It's not always possible, right? Maybe the odd person can come close to it, but there's no harm in just simply listening, right? And maybe we can get into that a bit shortly. But I do understand with the Dylan Rounds case, it might be more testing and more demanding on people due to the nature of when it comes to the original story, the original people directly involved in the case, at times could be deemed as a bit questionable and hard to trust or believe. But what I would say is, why not just focus in on some of the events, some of the story? Maybe not the whole lot, because it might have come back and forth like the gun and key fob, but just ask yourself, are there certain occurrences, certain timestamps, certain events, how things played out, which have never changed since? And it's always or mainly been worded in a very specific way. I would say so, such as the 25th of May, Dylan Rounds bumping into Chase Venstra, and how Dylan did not give him a lift but lied to the mother at the time. He did give him a lift, etc. That story hasn't really changed since. The story of Chase Venstra, 7:01 a.m, the 28th of May 2022 at Snowville Flying J's, the story that was told by Candice Cooley, but actually, in terms of where it originated from and who described it, Justin Rounds. So for someone like Corey to say, nope, that didn't exactly happen, it happened the night or the day before, and something else was involved, and other people were involved, and in between it could have involved in Dylan being taken out, blah, 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 and Justin Rounds knows, I've told Justin Rounds and I've told the FBI. Well, Justin Rounds publicly was in agreement with the fact that Chase Venstra at 7:01 a.m. at Snowville Flying J's, and then later on at Little Caesars Pizza, 10:30 p.m, etc., etc., and Clinton, KFC in between, right? Justin Rounds didn't really protest at that point, so he was in agreement. So, you know, I think there's a bit of disconnect in the background, and I think other people are starting to see it as well, but I'm just mentioning these points, right? So just look, right? Times where you really feel that you've got trust issues, whether it be caused by other cases or just people in life you've surrounded yourself with. When you feel you can't trust somebody, more so, and it's more important, when you feel you can't trust the police, or you can't trust the family members or the friends of the victim, that's where it's most serious. If you can't trust general public, you can't trust outsiders, you can't trust other true crimers, it really isn't the end of the world, okay? Right? Because they're not top of the hierarchical list. The ones at the top, such as the family members, friends, LE, officials who are directly in the case, who have been impacted by it, who are working on it physically, in real life, in person. You want to believe in them the most because they're the most hands-on people. They see everything, or most of it, and hear things as well. So you'd like to believe what they're saying is true. In other cases, it tends to be true. In the Dylan Rounds one, because some mistakes and errors made over time, mixed in with maybe, let's say, certain characters out there or online, tainting the image of these people, it makes it a little bit uneven. And then the general public, impressionable audience, who do they listen to first? Some people have been around for quite some time and seen it go back and forth to the point it's like, where do I even go now? What do I think now, right? You can see that damage can definitely be done, especially telling with long-time people that may have supported the family or the police and now are a little bit uneasy about the overall situation and what comes out of their mouths now on, because of other things going about and talked about in the case, which is linked to the family or friends or the police, right? So you could call that the most worrying times. If you're in that situation where you can't trust anything and you don't know what to trust, you get fucked, right? So the best method is just look back and reflect on certain specific events or characters or dates or phone pings, times, dates, location, any of that. You don't have to like dive into everything all at once. Maybe look at one thing one by one and pick out, like how you would pick crisp out of a bag. Instead of picking out the broken crisp, the fragmented ones, pick out the full shaped crisp, or as Americans say, chips. Let's get trendy. Got to use the correct terminology, my goodness. Pull out the full pieces, which remain intact, which have not been tainted, which have not been corrupt or fractured. So, such as events of the 25th of May Dillon rounds, picking up Chase Spencer, coming across him first time. That's never changed since. The introduction of Don Hatley, how things played out in the past, from farming injury to being cared for by the grandparents of Dillon Rounds and Dillon, and then working for Dillon. And then Brenner being introduced afterwards. That story has not changed since. The story of Justin being threatened by Brenner in the past about being killed, serious red flag, not enough done about it, but that's not changed since either, right? And there'll be other examples as well, but I'm just giving you brief ones on the spot. Once you've picked those events and factors out which have not changed ever since and have remained consistent, you can establish a little bit of order, right? It's not the end of the world then. You put it into perspective that, after everything that's gone down and how things have been talked about and worded, these things still ring true to this day. So there is hope, right? And the reason why I say in general, whether you agree wholeheartedly or just portions of it, have a level of trust within the key people directly involved in the case and maybe the original story. Use it as foundations that can separate the lost causes from the ones that have a chance of pulling themselves back out of the hole, out of the darkness, right? So, this is where it ties in with how to counter a rabbit hole, how to counter the negative side effects of going down one by using reinforced foundations and structuring of the original story, right? The full original story or certain parts of it which have remained consistent, as I said, right? When wacky theories and ideas and certain events which have been worded and twisted as if it was a fact have come about, some people have fallen for it, right? Maybe quite a few people have. Quite a few people have listened and maybe internalized it as well, and others have been purely brainwashed. So then anything else they hear can't be true because what they've heard alternatively is the truth, but it's not always definitively the actual truth being portrayed as the truth when it's not. And that gets very confusing, right? And just like with some of the theories, ideas and concepts and certain events where it's so deep how one thing could link to another when really it doesn't, but you start going down those rabbit holes like Salty Pancakes likes to fantasize about, and the Salty Pancakes crew and the former Salty Pancakes crew. Let's not forget that, as I said, I always give a provenance of people where they come from. If it's people that comes onto my channel or leave comments, I'll make a reference. Oh, I remember that person. They're a former Salty Pancakes viewer, or they're a former Jim Terry viewer. I just do it naturally so then you know who they are, where they come from, and where they once were. Just as a backstory, just as I give a backstory to the case and the characters involved, who's who, Brenner, his previous criminal history, Chase Spencer's previous criminal history, etc. You get an idea. And you get an idea of a person's background or their behaviour and allegiances, then you know how to act accordingly in the future. And if you ever get tension or conflict, you could think, well, you know what? That person may have been negatively influenced by a certain community out there in the past, hence why the way they are now. So I know how to deal with things. There's just a certain element, right? So anyway, we're linking back to rabbit holes. I don't know if Bob Farrell, Jim Terry are into rabbit holes. I think they may do it in a more sophisticated way, but it still translates to rabbit holes at times. So this is what you got to understand. People out there, different channels out there, may end up coming to the same conclusion or showing the same behavior when it comes to things being talked about in a case, such as Dillon Rounds, but how they cover it or portray it, it might be concealed, it might be done in a covert way, it might be done in a more sophisticated way, hence why you get the words and the descriptions changing from an idea, a theory, a rumour to an actual fact, which it's not, but it's been constructed, binded in a way to be able to push it out there so then it's more believable. Right? Take that into consideration. You come across these different channels, there's different approaches for good reasons and bad. With the potato pickers, Salty Pancakes group and former group, hardliners, whatever, a certain style. The key wording, deep dive. Yeah, let's go for a deep dive. Let's go really deep. Let's analyze this till the cows come home. Analysing it so much, but not enough hard evidence to back it up with. Kind of falls flat. A lot of these deep dives over time have led to rabbit holes, which led to people burying their heads into holes and at times getting lost and, having to try and trace their way back to some normality or something that they can believe in. Kind of like a lost cause, right? So they have the deep dives, that's the key wording there, but the likes of Bob Farrell's channel, believing in people where it might backfire, Jim Tay to an extent, some of his audience members, right? Their style and approach, delivering the facts, delivering the truth, groundbreaking, shocking, you're not going to believe this, never seen before, never heard before, this is the first time ever. Key persuasive language, just like advertising. If they've got experience behind it, then they can incorporate it here. I said, evolutionary competitiveness to outdo others, to stand out from the crowd. They can do the same type of bullshit as the Salty Pancakes group, but if they do it in a more sophisticated way, they can stand out more unique and make people believe in them more than simply rustling around in bushes and loose leaves. You dress more formally, you speak more appropriately, you use more advanced wording, or you can somehow back it up with fake hard evidence in a way at times. People may be more likely to believe in you, right? Certain styles and approaches, but at the end of the day, it can lead to the same thing, waste of time, or just simply not quite relevant to the case. Something could be considered groundbreaking, something could be considered first time ever shown, first time ever aired. Somewhat related to Dylan Rounds. Did it lead to Dylan Rounds being found? No. Did it lead to a suspect coming out of it or a new lead? No. So what was really the point of it then? Right? Maybe it's people grasping at the deck of cards they have, not being given the best deck of cards, but working with what they've got and trying to turn it into something when it's not. Like turning a wet napkin into a pure white swan. It's not quite going to work. It's going to flop, likely, right? So I think if you're going to do a deep dive, right, let's do it raw language. You're going to do a deep dive. You're going to go down rabbit holes. You got to make sure you don't fall down them and get lost. Attach a rope behind you, like an imaginary one, and that rope can pull you back out at a time when needed. And what do you fall back on? The original foundations of the original story line of how things followed through within the case, such as Dylan Rounds or the Kenny Veach case. You see, with the Kenny Veach case, right, the same old regurgitated story. Once upon a time, there was a hiker of a certain age and at this time, date and year went out, never seen again, and previously mentioned about a mysterious cave, wanting to go back out there, but never came back, the end, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's very vague, very regurgitated. Other people can't be bothered doing research. The big channels hardly ever do research on the case. As for the smaller channels that work really hard on it, it's annoying, right? But at least there is a consistent storyline to the case. So for the people that do go deeper than anyone else, such as me, with all the different theories and ideas, with exception, not as bad there, more under control, because it's directly described as a theory, and that is all, whether you agree with it or not. A theory can be significantly deep, but still under control, because it's only a theory at the end of the day. But I think some people get a bit hysterical when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case on how they go about deep theories, and significantly worse if those deep dive theories have been done in a more sophisticated way and twisted to make it seem more of an actual fact. So then when people do look at it, they start pinpointing it and making unnecessary links and really hyperventilating, and then maybe they get a bit erratic and a bit out of control, a bit paranoid, and then the breakdown, meltdown, then it damages the credibility. It might also damage the people around, the impressionable audience, confuses everything, clusterfuck. What a mess, right? And for those that go so deep and then realise or are proven that it was wrong or it was a waste of time, misinformation by others out there or by actual hard evidence, all these people are like, oh, it's like prisoners of war. They've been captured, they've been encased within lies and deception, that finally once that shell has been broken and the light has shined on in, they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to think. They don't have foundations. They don't have that rope attached to them to pull them back out so they can follow the original story again. No, they've got to go through like some kind of like cryonic type chamber, deep freezing stage of trying to defrost, right? Over time, recuperate. Takes longer, that recovery rate in here. Not exactly efficient, is it? But with the Kenny Veach case, theories welcome. Very deep, very wide, very vast, even hard to believe at times, but it's not that bad and it's somewhat under control, right? People have switched and changed in behaviour when it comes to the Kenny Veach case, but that was more because of them covering a certain part in it, which then maybe they were influenced by third-party people out there, hence the change can be a thing. But look, I've covered many theories on my channel from Kenny Veach, and look, here I am, standing, talking, functioning, and using some form of reasoning ability and still demonstrating balance. The factor that I covered the Kenny Veach case, which considerably less material compared to the Dylan Rounds one, considerably less structure compared to the Dylan Rounds one. The Dylan Rounds case has been acted on by family, friends, police, etc. The Kenny Veach case, bit of police, bit of search and rescue for a couple of days at the time in 2014. After that, game over, that's it, pack up, leave, gone. Family didn't do much, F all. And then it was upon the general public, hikers, volunteers, etc., to do it out of their own interest, time, money, whatever, as we've seen demonstrations of, examples, who've gone out there and tried uncovering the truth and putting it into perspective of how things could have played out. Greater demands there, significantly less resources, significantly less material and groundwork with a very basic, vague story. More room, more opportunity for deeper end theories and things getting out of control, out of hand, from aliens, reptilians, portals, military takeover, assassinations, drug cartel, kidnapping, the lot. And despite me being involved in all of that and looking at it all, to go from that to right now and how I've covered the Dylan Rounds case ever since for over a year straight, demonstrating more balance than ever seen before. It just goes to show that you can be heavily involved and maybe invested in deep end theories, wide, far and vast in other cases, and still come out on the other end and still function. It's doable, it's possible, but you need to use the appropriate wording when covering it or when listening to it in hopes that the person that is covering it is using appropriate language, something which has not been seen in the Dylan Rounds case that often because of how it's been worded as more of a fact than a rumour. And eventually it's been uncovered as a rumour, and eventually people have realised, but it's not been efficient and it's been damaging in a way to the case, kind of taints the picture. It kind of makes it harder to know what's what, and it leaves more rubbish and clutter behind. So then there was a clean-up job in debunking stuff, or at least finding evidence, hard evidence, to then dispel that and dispel this, right? None of that is needed, as if in the first place you initiate that you're just simply looking at a theory. This is the thing, a theory can turn into a fact eventually. It can evolve throughout time. And in that time frame, material can be gathered, resources can be gathered, proof and evidence, hard evidence, physical evidence, visual evidence, auditory, whatever. And then it can fill that gap in between. What people did in the Dylan Rounds case was jumping on in too fast, right? Maybe some have an agenda with trying to get a story out there, even though it could be wrong. But the ones that do listen may take it too close to heart and be too trustworthy in those type So they just listen out firsthand and instantly assume that it's the truth and nothing but the truth. And then some don't even need convincing that much, that they don't need full-on evidence, and that it's enough for them to believe just by hearing, and then they just simply keep to that storyline from there on then. What good does that do, right? I think if you're going to cover the Dylan Rounds case, or you're going to cover any other case out there, and it's one which involves different theories, outside of the box thinking, the best approach to go around it is by getting involved to begin with, listening in if possible, then thinking for yourself, right? Use outside of the box thinking to develop certain theories and ideas, and then over time listen, maybe learn to see the reactions and responses from others, and wait patiently to see if any evidence does come out of it, or if there is a reaction from those out there. Sometimes if you cover a deep theory, sometimes if you cover a theory long enough and deep enough and you're consistent, once again, that consistency can trigger noise. It can trigger others out there with the right resources or the right material information that then come on out and say, you know what, you've been pushing this for too long. It's time to set the record straight. Here's the proof to prove what you said is true. Or other times, here's the proof to say what you're talking about, what you're thinking of is invalid. And then it's over and done with. Right? And then that's it. You move on. Not that damaging, right? So, the foundations are the groundwork of the original case, the original story of the case. Believe in it fully or to an extent, if you can. And then from there on, you can venture out down different avenues, pathways, rabbit holes, go so far down them, treat it as a theory, nothing more, and await to see if there's hard evidence or proof to back those points up. If not, maybe pull out. If dispelled, pull out. And what you land on is the original story where you started. So yeah, it might feel negative. Oh, back to square one. Oh, back to the start. Here we go again. We've not made any progress in the case. We're back to the beginning. Ooh, but guess what? It's better knowing that you're back at the beginning rather than being completely lost and not knowing where you are anywhere or any place, any time, right? I said, we've seen lost causes over time. Not instantly, but over time. There's a process to everything, right? So you got to ask yourself, you as a viewer or you as a future or potential true crime coverage channel or mystery channel coverage or a singular case you get involved in, ask yourself, do you want to become a lost cause? Do you want to be in a situation where you're too trustworthy at times, where it can lead to you believing in stuff which isn't really true, but because of persuasive language you fell for it, then you go down rabbit holes and go so deep that you get so lost, and when you are pulled out of it, it takes quite some time to recover and try and get your senses back, and maybe at times they never come back, so then you just leave the case and kind of a waste of time. Do you want to be in that situation? Well, if not, feel free to, go about it in an appropriate way with the language, with the wording, right? It all depends on the situation you're in, right? If you're the one covering a case, then you have a bit more control, provided you're not too influenced by others, but you do your own independent thing to begin with. You think for yourself to begin with. You think outside of the box to begin with. Because if you're the one covering it, you can control how things are stated and worded and presented. If you're a viewer, though, that can be harder, because when you're a viewer, you're more on the defense. You're not on the offense. You're not on the main line. You're not the one pushing all this out. You're the one receiving or listening in, right? The reason why you wouldn't be pushing it, because you're not making videos yourself. Maybe you can go into other channels to push an idea, but for the right reasons, of course, as said. Correct wording, appropriate wording. So if you're in a situation where someone was trying to persuade you in an unnatural way that something was the truth when it really isn't, and you feel a bit dodgy about it, use your instinct. If you feel that something is off, you feel that something is wrong, trust that first. Skeptical had the same feeling in recent time. I said, well, if it's worked in the past, stick with that, right? There's no harm. If you have an instinct, a feeling, a sense which makes you feel a bit uneasy and you can use that to prevent damage, then use it, right? Maybe it's the body telling you something. And of course, the more times you have those feelings, and over time it's proven to be the correct strategy, always make use of that. It's like its own little inner framework of foundations, own little bungee cord to pull you back out of the abyss, right? So let me know your thoughts down below. Now, linking back, if you're a viewer, or initially a viewer, and then maybe down the line approaching to creating videos yourself, when listening into people, besides the usage of your own senses, what you think and how you feel, whether something's off or not. When you listen to people, that's just a key thing. Listen. By listening, it can also reduce tension, drama, and conflict. If you don't entirely listen, it could be seen as disrespectful. They could take it the wrong way, and then it just leads to them throwing the toys out the pram, right? There might be times where you don't really want to listen or even take it on board, but as a form of damage limitation, there's no harm in listening. And the reason why you should always listen, not that you have to internalize. You can show compliance, but you don't have to use internalization. You don't have to be brainwashed. You can listen, you can say thank you can say goodbye, and that's it. That's it. And you can continue on or just go elsewhere. Damage limitation, we've seen how characters and people can be. If they don't get what they want, they throw the toys out the pram. I've seen it firsthand, of course. If you don't listen to them, if you don't acknowledge them, they throw the toys out the pram. So just by a form of damage limitation to begin with, just let them hear them out, what they've got to say, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Take it in if you feel it's right, and if not, just listen, and that's it, okay? Simply by listening, then you can compare and contrast to listening into other conversations as well. And if there's a form of consistency, then maybe that could be a little sign that it could be true, possibly. So listen, then check elsewhere for other conversations, listen and repeat, and see if you can establish a cross-network of consensus, but independent consensus. If you are in a situation where you're listening to a certain group, person, community, and move on elsewhere and find out that that community is interconnected with that community out there, be cautious. They probably are going to think the same. It's like that researcher bias effect. There's an effect. It's not natural. If you're in a situation where you've got all these independent people who don't even know one another, yet they all know the same thing, it might be a bit more natural there to an extent. And I can't exactly recall, but I remember, what was it now? It was either to do with the Brenner court case, court hearing, how the majority of people at a point seemed to be in agreement independently that Brenner was of somewhat okay health. And was it the last court hearing or the one before that? It might have been the last one, where Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds believed that Brenner was healthy and okay, despite the act he was supposedly putting on. But I think that was a long-standing leg injury, so you exclude that. In terms of Brenner's health, at least at the time, Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds in agreement with one another. Key people in the case, of course, that's their outlook on the case. Glorindellen, not influenced by the parents, an independent person, but someone that has been present in the court hearings in real life, agreed themselves independently and not influenced by the family. That's good level of consistency. A friend of a Montello local that was present as well at the court hearing at the time also agreed that Brenner seemed somewhat of okay health, considering what he supposedly was like beforehand, right? Because beforehand, a previous court hearing, family said he looked okay. I think Glorindellen said he was okay, but then a couple of others in the background were saying, no, he was ill, he had a mask on, on death's door, etc. But then, the last court hearing, there's been a level of consistency ever since, and it's not really changed. Besides outsiders that claim Brenner's got dementia, but that's not been backed up with hard evidence, so put that aside. Check for consistency. Check for a consensus between multiple people that don't really know one another, nor have they interacted with one another, but have come to the same conclusion. That's at times can be a good sign, right? But if you are in a situation where you do come across people in a case community that think the same, agree the same, but in the background they know each other, they're connected with one another, yeah, they're probably going to think in line because they know each other and there's something going on. So be a bit cautious and wary about that. Okay? So, like with the whole trust issues and who do you trust, and those that can trust very easily and fall down a rabbit hole of deception, lies, and become a lost cause. And those that out there that might become a lost cause through brainwashing purely, as we've described in a previous video. We don't need to go over that again. If you want to look back at it, feel free to do so. But the factor of emotions, and that might be one of the biggest factors in the Dylan Rounds case, which has basically effed people up in terms of their judgment and their perception and outlook overall on the case. If you are an emotional person, or if you are deeply emotionally connected to the Dylan Rounds case for whatever reason, or you can relate in some way, when covering it or learning about the case, it's probably going to be proven more difficult if you're in that situation. Just like how they say, well, I don't know if it applies quite in real life, but I'm sure it probably would. Conflict of interest, family interest. If you're a doctor or some kind of nurse or surgeon and there is a family member or a loved one that comes on in severely hurt, got to be operated on, maybe you're probably not going to do it because of conflicts of interest, family related. It's a bit biasness and emotions can take over. Maybe mistakes can be made, more pressure on you to try and fix them. So somebody else takes lead, gets the job done efficiently, and then the person's saved, right? Something like that. If you're too emotionally invested, it can impact your performance. You put too much pressure on yourself, it can impact your performance. Now, on a very small scale, maybe that could apply to me. Not so much that I label myself this, but other people have, where they've said, Warlike Ref, you put too much pressure on yourself. You are too hard on yourself when it comes to failing or underperforming. It's just one of those things, right? But if you alleviate some of those factors, you understand that you can't control everything, that then things feel a bit lighter. And if things are a bit lighter, you can think more clearly, you can take it in better, and you're a bit more alert and aware without all the other stuff holding or dragging you down, right? So if you're involved in the Dylan Rounds case and you feel a deep emotional connection, then likely you're probably going to be sided a certain direction, where it's down a biased route, which can impact your judgment and overall recall on the case and what you believe in and what you trust. A level of biasness, right? So the best position to be in is you cover the case of Dylan Rounds, or you listen on in because you're interested in just simply learning about it, on the condition that you have no connection to Dylan Rounds. You don't really have much of an emotional connection either, if not none. You're just simply here because you're interested in the case. When you're interested in something, you're more likely to perform. You're more likely to do better at whatever. In contrast, if you're in a situation where you're bored, you're not interested in something, then clearly you're probably not going to follow along or pick up on everything. You're not going to be on point. You're not going to be high performance. You're going to be underperforming. It's not good, right? So it's the same with a high emotional connection to the case. If you're too emotionally invested in the case, that can cloud your judgment. It can make you biased at times. If you're too emotional, then maybe you might get swayed in a certain direction through persuasive language of others out there that are doing it in unnatural ways. Hence why those that are a bit too trustworthy, that maybe are too emotionally connected and really are connected to the Dylan Rounds case, maybe like Bob Farrell, who could be considered very passionate, ends up becoming vulnerable and then being led down a rabbit hole, and it goes to a lost cause from there. And the same can happen to viewers as well, like I said. Whereas if you're just simply here and you're like, hi, I'm interested in this case, nothing more, nothing less. Because I'm interested, that's why I'm here. Because I'm interested, I'm more likely to stick around. Because I'm interested, I'm more likely to look at it from all angles, etc., etc. So I think It's not like the matter of if you're too emotionally connected to the case, then don't cover it at all. It's not to that extent, but it's like if you are a bit more emotional or you feel connected or you feel you can relate to the case, just be cautious with how you go about stuff because it could be the driving force which pulls you in the wrong direction down a dark road, and it's not always a good outcome, right? Why am I here? I'll give you a bit of a backstory and it might help you understand. The reason why I moved on to the Dylan Rounds case was because initially, at the time, there was nothing more to cover in the Kenny Veach case. And quite a few people wanted me to cover the Dylan Rounds case. But before I made the decision to move on to it, I did have a brief look at it. What the case was about, the environment, location, terrain. The moment I saw desert terrain, out in the open, kind of like a hiking situation, as thought at the time, oh, there was a person out there, may have walked back to their trailer, never seen again, whatever, etc. A few items left behind. Very similar to Kenny Veach with those little aspects. So because there was similarities there and later similarities in how the case evolved and how people were within the case and behaviours and changes, fake accounts, slander, defamation, me being targeted, resistance, I experienced it all in the past. So the more links, the more similarities, with things you've previously covered, the easier it is to move on to this if you've already got experience. If you're doing it for the very first time, that in itself can be harder and it can take more time to learn about stuff, right? If you're a bit more hardened, a bit more of a veteran to something, right? You get involved with another thing, but the similarities, you might be able to pick up on it better, pick up on it quicker, grasp it easier than if you was doing it for the very first time, right? See, this is the thing. Dylan Brown's case, we're covering it since near to the beginning and working on after to what could have happened and also looking back to what originally happened. When I used to cover cases, when I started covering cases, the way I did things was I don't retell the whole story because I don't do one video. I do multiple, right? I cover a video of what's currently happening. And then more so after that, I do videos of what could have happened, what's happening right now, right? And maybe down the line, I can learn about the original story and look back. So I kind of do it in a different starting point. I don't start from the very beginning. I start where it's left off and go from there and move forwards. And if at a point I feel like, oh, I don't know much or I've got stuck, then I'll return back to the very beginning, learn, and then when I return back to where I left off from, I'm already ahead and I keep pushing on more. So with the Dylan Rounds case, yeah, it was a bit of a change of pace, right? Because at the time the case was unfolding. So what I did was I kind of did a bit of negotiating, kind of took in mind what supposedly happened, but then pushed on further, thinking outside of the box immediately and independently immediately. And although it might not have been directly in line with the story, down the line, it proved to be the right plan and the right strategy because it kept going back and forth and things derailed to a point where things halted and people naturally started thinking outside of the box or thinking elsewhere. I was already doing it before others were, so I was kind of ahead of that curve, right? And with previous experience, that's what accelerated me to be able to do it in that format. So yes, of course, you've got experience from the past. It can make it significantly easier when you move on to the next case. And because from my experience, my encounters, that I wasn't emotionally connected to Kenny Veach, I wasn't emotionally connected to Dylan Rounds. I'm just simply interested in these specific cases. And with interest can peak looking at it from all angles. And if you look at it from all angles, you listen, you look, you get a bit more balance, right? So what would the next talking point be? Well, let's just round off the bit about if you're emotional or not. If you're emotional or you feel connected to a case, a person, proceed with caution, right? Try not let the biasness guide you or divert you from the truth, right? Because that can happen. It has happened. I've seen people on my channel, a few over time, that have changed in behaviour, which is unfortunate, which is disappointing. But because they may care too much about the case or how things go about, because they're too emotional or they're too emotionally connected, or they feel they can relate, they go down the dark path, right? They lose control. You're too emotional, you lose control. You lose sense of judgment, ability, focus. You're not focused. You become vulnerable, or you maybe already are vulnerable. I mean, I'd come to a brief conclusion that quite a few people, or over time, a range of people in the Dylan Rounds community, whether they're tied to the case or not, maybe of a certain gender, could be considered vulnerable because they seem to keep returning back, or were at a point returning back to channels or communities, people, areas where they may have been mistreated. But it was forgive, forget, move on, and let it repeat all over again. Some eventually learned their lesson, some eventually managed to adapt, others have not. And it's been a repetitive cycle. So you could say that directly or indirectly, there are people vulnerable in the community. And if they're vulnerable, they could turn to a lost cause, or maybe they already are a lost cause. If they're not, if they could be guided the right way, that would be good, right? But sometimes that's not always possible. But what is possible is for the future of when new people come on in, or future people involved with other cases, and they see something like this, they know what to expect, how to go about things, the correct approach when learning, listening, researching a case, right? So I think we should move on to the next point. Balance. Maybe one of the bigger features in the Dylan Rounds case, right? People say more people covering a case, the better it is. Not always. The more people there are, the more characters, potentially slightly higher chances of more egos, more clashes, more conflict, more disagreements, right? You think of a small little dispute between a little group of peasants in a village, over and done with pretty quick, maybe a bit petty but sorted. You scale that up to two fully grown armies of different factions or kingdoms, and they clash together, greater amount of casualties, greater amount of damage, and the cost of war as well increases. Okay, so that's how it is with the Dylan Rounds case. A lot of people involved, quite a few people covering it at a point in time with a backing an audience. Take in mind, certain channels more established than others. At the time, Doug, no thanks, what was it? Was it 40,000 subscribers plus? Mob Crew Chris, 40,000, 70,000. Zavgirl at the time, 100,000. Big audiences, comes with new people, fresh faces, could be considered good, but too many of them, more chance of clashing. And we obviously saw that. Obviously, Stamina War took place and people did walk away and channels did as well. But initially, probably not always a good thing when you got too many people. Too many noise, too many voices, too much over talking in certain environments such as live streams and formats like that where people have a voice. Oh, it's good to give people a voice, but if you give the wrong person a voice, then they take over, and we're seeing that takeover effect in the case. And just to throw in quickly, the takeover effect. Many channels have given in to demands of others, given them what they want so they could talk and talk and talk, and then it's led to some channels being shut down, directly or indirectly. A bit of a weird coincidence, a bit like a curse in a sense. With my channel, I've not given people what they want, okay? Sexual frustration has come out from it. Cleo, no, this is not the time. We're not talking about that type. Shh. Let's maintain focus, okay? I'm not pissing about right now. But sexual frustration, where people want to penetrate into my channel. They want to be on the channel, or at a point they did, or others out there may do. People out there fantasize to the point where they feel they're in grasp to grab at it and pull it, yank it, twang it. I'm coming on in. I'm ringing the bell. Ding-a-ling-a-ding. I'm here. Time for me to talk and take over the show. Nope, not happening here. A certain structure, a certain format, a certain style does not align with them. Yes, it led to conflict. Yes, it led to problems. But guess what? Long term, turned out okay. So if you're getting involved in true crime or you're doing your own coverage on a mystery, maybe at least at first, do your own thing. So you've always got something to fall back on, right? You do your own thing, you might get conflict because of it, but the long-term factor is you got your own channel. You got your own videos. You got your own ideas. You got your own thoughts. People don't own you. People don't control you, right? People can say, do this, do that, or stop that. You don't have to. They don't control your channel. They don't have access to your channel. You get what I'm saying? There might be other channels out there at a point in time, Dylan Round's Case or further afar, where they're kind of controlled by others, voices in their ears, voices in the head, whatever, which tells them to do certain things and they give in to it. And, you know, maybe the argument in recent time was, Bob Farrell is an independent person and he has his own channel. He does his own thing and he's got his own success, etc., etc., etc. But what about the time where Bob Farrell was on the verge of quitting, backing down from YouTube, walking away? But then Bob Farrell said, I had a discussion with Mr. X and Jim Terry, good friends, and came to the conclusion, I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to keep on pushing forwards. Oh, did Mr. X give Bob Farrell the motivational talk and speech of, don't let the haters get you down, don't be put down by the haters, keep on moving forwards, keep on pushing. We the people. Kind of like what Mr. X said to me at the time, before getting all whingy and whiny afterwards. Interesting. Just potential possibility of possible discussions that could have gone on in the background. Bob Farrell can do his own thing, but still, at times, possibly led astray by others who pose as a know-it-all. And then Bob Farrell believes in that because of his passion for the case, but because Bob Farrell is passionate about the case and emotionally invested, it clouds his judgment. He believes in things too much when it might not be the truth, right? You can see the patterns there. These are just little examples to throw about here and there. But yeah, long term, if you're in a situation where you do your own thing, it's for the better, right? Yes, you can say there's limitations. Yes, you can say you miss out on some things and you don't do others. Maybe down the line, if there is a bit of balance or there's a bit more stability, it could be implemented eventually. It's like live streams. Never used to do them. Didn't like the idea of it. Seemed a bit dodgy. Didn't seem exactly practical, but found a way around it to an extent and sometimes do it, and it kind of worked out, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you got your channel, you do what you do, and that's basically it. Obviously, it's best sometimes doing it in an appropriate way or wording it in an appropriate way to try and reduce tension if you can, right? I mean, I've seen it here and there, like with in real life as well. It can be times surrounded by maybe a bit of cancer, maybe a bit knobheads, whatever, and say this, say that, and then, oh, they don't like it, they get all triggered. Yeah, screw them. Inunfones adred. That's basically it there. But, I mean, that aside, you know, you can have it somewhat under control. You can have a form of balance just by simply listening in, not having to take action all the time, right? I mean, from what I said, people can say, oh, what did you just say, Raf? You know, is it even true? Can we even believe it? You just base it off where I'm at, right? I've done this, I've done that, I'm still here. So something must have worked. Something must have gone right. If we're going to put in such basic wording, something went right for me to still be here to be able to do videos like this. Times in the past where I did videos and people warned me, don't make this, it could go wrong, it could have dire consequences for you, your life, your channel and everything. Yes, some people were concerned and it's good of them to show concern. It shows that they care. But if it's under control, providing it can be, and it's worded appropriately, and you cover it in a specific way, you can work around it. It's not about getting away with it because you're not doing anything wrong in the first place. You're just simply pointing or documenting something within reason. And you use the appropriate wording, it prevents others from being able to twist and turn it as much as they would elsewhere, right? I mean, some people in the past that have protested, Raf, if you're going to cover this, I'm never coming back. I'm never commenting ever again. I've had enough, like in the Kenny Veach case. Oh, hello, piss pot. You've returned. You want some bread? Some milk? You can have some scraps, I guess. But people do come back, right? This thing you also got to take in mind, right? A little bit different. You could call it blackmail, emotional manipulation. You could be covering a case. You could be covering it. You have your own channel somewhat established or growing. People might not like you showing balance. People may not like the fact that you listen to others besides them. So they threaten, I'm going to pull away. I'm not going to be a member anymore. I'm not going to watch your channel anymore. I'm going to make sure other people don't watch either. And it's like, if you're in a somewhat okay position, or it's not the end of the world to begin with because it's casual what you do, and then it can be like, oh well, is where it is. Take that into mind, right? If you're in a somewhat okay situation, or it's just very casual to begin with, it's not the end of the world if people pull out. You take that into consideration. I mean, statistically speaking, let's just word it like this. Previously, it was stated by some stranger on my channel because of the drama, the conflict, that about 5 people ended up unsubscribing from my channel, or 6 people cancelled their memberships on this channel. Oh no. Oh no, where's my stepmom? Where's all my stepmoms in the chat? I need some comforting right now. Oh, what am I gonna do? Hold on a minute, let me just realise. 5 people unsubscribed, somewhat manipulated by other people out there, to 22 people, 27 people have unsubscribed from the channel. How would you know the statistics when you're not even in control of this channel, nor do you have the analytical reports? But let me just look back. Okay, we've seen a drop off here. 10 people have left. 5 people have gone from that program. But I gained 500,000 views. 500,000 people watched elsewhere across a couple of months. Not the end of the world, is it? That in a space of a week or two, 300 plus subscribers just like that. So if I'm going to lose 5 subscribers, I gain 300. If I'm going to lose 10 viewers, I gain 50,000. You know what I'm saying? There can be a positive trade-off. It's not always the end of the world, but there are times where you might lose a key person, a valuable person of reasoning, thoughts, material, ideas, and maybe research they've done. How does that happen? Well, maybe if you piss them off the wrong way, they can move on. That can be unfortunate, of course, whether it's your fault or not. But if we're tying it back to going about the case incorrectly and how you deal and handle stuff and how you can be swayed in a certain direction for the wrong reasons and become a lost cause. I said it's happened on my channel, it's happened with a few people over time. Here, key individuals, once good individuals, turned sour, rotten, unfortunate. And yes, other people can say, so what? If 2 good people leave, you'll get 10 others that come along eventually. Probably, but still, you can acknowledge it at least as it's a great shame that that happened at the end of the day, right? But if we're talking in general, yeah, you probably can shrug it off if a few people move on or leave or had enough, that people say, oh, I've had enough of the drama, so I'm going to move on to another channel which talks about even more drama. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? No, but that's the way people are. Bit of a lost cause, right? Not being able to think clearly or straight. Just one of those things. And there'll be others that would have dropped off because they're just simply tired and done with the case. Nothing you can do about that. People have a limit. People have certain stamina. It is where it is. You know, you might be more likely to cover a case if you're the one actually producing videos rather than if you was just listening and watching, right? And maybe a bit more of a responsibility when it comes to covering it rather than just listening in. Might not always be the case, but sometimes it can be, right? So yeah, I mean, statistically, people are just wondering what the hell's going on right now. Statistically, within the last month, 240, well, nearly 250,000 views. So it's fine. It's under control there. Yeah, it's to think. A bit off subject. Just as a reference, in case people are really interested as to how one gets views when considerably the Dylan Rounds case is dead at this point, arguably speaking, it's because videos on YouTube on your channel are public, ones from a year ago, 2 years ago. They can still gain people's interest over time. Videos can explode over time. It happens, and it can happen to anyone. One thing that hasn't happened to me is having a video that's 5, 8 years old and then suddenly it gets 2 million, 20 million views. Never happened. Is it the end of the world? No. I'd rather consistent growth rather than a one-hit wonder. There's too many undeserving channels out there that have a one-hit wonder for F all in terms of deserving it, but they get it, but they don't utilise it. And those that do try and utilise it, they don't get anywhere. You can see some channels out there, gameplay, a pet video, a funny video, animal one, edit, whatever. 12 million views, classified as a viral hit. Some people proceed onwards with that and think, oh, well, because that video did well, I'll do more videos on the same thing. The next video gets 12,000. The next video gets 2,000. And then all the videos after that get 24 views. So it just goes to show that if you get a one-hit wonder video on your channel, that does not set you up for the future. Not at all. And as I said, if you're going to cover drama or conflict, that doesn't equal success either. Do it if you need to defend yourself or set the record straight or document stuff if it's relevant to the case. That's only when you should really do it, and I've demonstrated that myself, right? Ideally, the only reason why drama is popular at times is when it involves, you know, a high-positioned individual out there in this world or a celebrity online, let's just say, like a YouTuber, streamer, influencer. If an influencer, a streamer, YouTuber is caught in drama, a scandal, maybe with a fellow famous person as well, then obviously people are going to be interested in it, just naturally because they're interested in those type of people to begin with and they watch anyway, right? That's what you got to take into mind. If you had two random people that came from the fish market, general public, having a complaint about the fish being battered too much and, you know, King Simone fingered his fillet too much and Nance has got like a carcass of one and there's nothing left on the bone because King Simone went hard at it, yeah, there could be a bit of tension, there could be a bit of drama, there could be a bit of pettiness. Nancy could have a bone to pick with, you know, King Simone about fingering the fillet too much. You know, you fingered it too much, it's gone raw. It was already raw, but now it's beyond that point. Who's going to care? Maybe people that are into fish. But that aside, not many in this world. But if it was two celebrities going at it, not with the fish, but talking about it, they're probably going to be more interested, more invested, right? And for those nobodies that then cover that drama, when it doesn't involve them, or not quite, they can do well as well, because as it was described on YouTube, if you do videos covering a popular person, it can bring attention to you too, and that can help with possible growth depending what type of theme or avenue you go down. So if those that have tried labeling it as I've used people's names to equal success, well, clearly statistically it can't be backed up and there's no correlation there because some of the videos have been a complete failure. So what does that say about that person out there who I've named? Not much. Not looking too good, is it? Take this into consideration. A war horn video where I blow into a bugle, an equivalent of a trumpet. Make a sound like that. Edit it a little bit with echo effect. Got more views than talking about Jim Terry. Bob Farrell, Ty Corbin, Shaq Lady, No Thanks, Tyler Feller, all combined together. Blowing into an instrument got more views, more attention, more interest than all those names combined together in the Dylan Browns case. You see, drama doesn't always equal success, but it's still necessary to cover at times of when you need to, right? As I said, I'm just mentioning a bit about the conflict and drama because if you're getting involved in a case, you might experience that side, you know, that negative side too. So if you know how to deal with it, then that should help. Now, maybe I can link it down below, pinned comment or just below that as to the previous video about brainwashing, and you can use that as a bit of guidance as well. So as I said at the start of this video, there will be a part 2 linking on to the comments of the previous video, and I can also incorporate this video too. The reason why it's not mentioned in this one is just because of the time and the length of this video itself. It's quite long already, and storage as well on the phone is kind of full. So be on the lookout for the part 2 of the Dylan Rounds talk and discussions, and in between you can share your thoughts and comments down below. If you do have any questions, whatever, just leave them down below. And if you want to share your experiences, you can list that down below as well. Some links as well if you wish to check them out. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and hopefully you may have learned something. It might have helped you or may help you in the future. That's it for now. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night.